My name is Emma, and I am 58 years old. That evening, my son-in-law handed me a glass of red wine with a smile that seemed almost too warm. Something about the smell made me pause. I set the glass down on the table without drinking. My daughter Rachel picked it up instead. 1 hour later, she collapsed on the kitchen floor. What I discovered that night about the man my daughter married changed everything. Before I tell you what happened to my daughter and what I discovered about the man she married, let me know where you are joining me from today. If stories about family secrets and betrayal resonate with you, please hit like and subscribe. What I am about to share changed everything I thought I knew about protecting my children. Let me take you back to a time when I believed my family was complete. I was living alone in Sacramento, California, in the same house where my late husband George and I had raised our children. George passed away 8 years ago from a sudden heart attack. One morning he was drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, and by that afternoon he was gone. The grief nearly destroyed me, but I had 2 children who needed their mother to keep going. My daughter Rachel was 32 years old at the time of the incident I am about to describe. She had grown into a remarkable woman, a successful attorney at one of the largest law firms in the city. Rachel had always been driven even as a little girl. She would stay up late studying, determined to be the best at everything she did. Her father would have been so proud of the woman she became. My son Marcus was 29, living in Seattle and working as a software engineer. He was quieter than his sister, more reserved, but equally successful in his own way. The 2 of them were close, calling each other at least once a week, despite the distance. I had spent over 30 years working as a registered nurse at the county hospital before retiring. Those decades taught me many things about the human body, about illness, about the subtle signs that something is wrong. I learned to trust my instincts, to pay attention when something felt off. That training would later save my daughter's life. Rachel met Derek 4 years before everything fell apart. She was at a business conference in San Francisco, presenting on corporate litigation, when a tall man approached her during the cocktail hour. Derek was 35 years old, handsome in a classic way, with dark hair graying slightly at the temples and a confident stride. He worked as a financial manager for a major investment bank, the kind of job that came with expensive suits and flashy watches. Their courtship was swift. Derek was charming, attentive, always saying the right things. He brought Rachel flowers every Friday, planned elaborate weekend getaways, and seemed genuinely interested in her career. Within 6 months, he was talking about marriage. Within a year, he proposed with a 3-carat diamond ring that sparkled like a promise. I remember the first time Rachel brought him home to meet me. Derek walked through my front door with a bottle of expensive wine and a bouquet of roses. He called me Mom right away, which struck me as overly familiar for a first meeting, but I dismissed the feeling. He was trying to make a good impression, I told myself. Throughout dinner, Derek was perfectly charming. He asked about my nursing career, listened attentively to stories about Rachel's childhood, and complimented my cooking 3 times. But something about him made me uneasy. His smile never quite reached his eyes. When Rachel looked away, his expression would shift, almost imperceptibly, becoming cooler, more calculating. That night, after Derek had driven Rachel home, I called her. "Honey, he seems almost too perfect," I said carefully. Rachel laughed. "Mom, you worry too much. That is just how he is. He really loves me." I let it go. What mother wants to reign on her daughter's happiness? Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe years of working in the emergency room had made me suspicious of everyone. The wedding was 18 months later, a lavish affair at a 5-star hotel overlooking the bay. 300 guests, a 12-piece orchestra, and enough flowers to fill a greenhouse. Derek's family paid for most of it, which he mentioned several times during the reception. I wore the blue dress Rachel had helped me pick out and tried to ignore the knot in my stomach. A year after the wedding, Rachel announced she was pregnant. I wept with joy. My first grandchild was on the way. When Sophie was born, a perfect 7 pounds and 2 ounces, with her mother's eyes, I thought my heart might burst. This tiny human represented everything good about the future. Sophie became the center of my world. I visited every week, sometimes more, to help Rachel with the baby. Derek was often absent during these visits, always at work or traveling for meetings. I told myself his absence was a blessing. It meant more time with my girls, without feeling his cool gaze watching us. By the time Sophie turned 2, I had settled into a comfortable routine. Sundays at Rachel's house, baking cookies with Sophie, helping with laundry, being a grandmother. From the outside, everything looked perfect. My daughter had a beautiful home, a successful career, a healthy child, and a husband who seemed devoted. But I was about to learn that appearances can be the most dangerous lies of all. The changes in Rachel started slowly, so gradually, that I almost missed them. Looking back now, I can see the pattern clearly, but at the time each small shift seemed explainable on its own. About 6 months before that terrible dinner, I noticed Rachel had lost weight. Her cheekbones were more prominent, her collarbones visible beneath her blouse. When I mentioned it, she waved her hand dismissively. "Just stress at work, Mum. We have a big case coming up." But her eyes looked tired in a way that went beyond professional pressure. There were shadows beneath them that makeup could not quite hide, and her movements seemed more guarded, less free. I started paying closer attention during my visits. Rachel used to be so relaxed at home, kicking off her heels the moment she walked through the door, laughing loudly at television shows, dancing with Sophie in the kitchen. Now she seemed constantly on edge, like a deer listening for predators in the forest. One Sunday, I arrived to find Rachel jumping when her phone rang. She snatched it off the counter so quickly that she nearly knocked over Sophie's juice cup. "Hello." Her voice was tight, almost breathless. Yes, I understand. I will be there." "Of course." She hung up and turned to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "That was Derek. He needs me to pick up his dry cleaning before he gets home." "But we were going to make cookies," I said, gesturing to Sophie, who was already wearing her tiny apron. "I know, Mum. I'm sorry. We will have to do it another time." She rushed out the door, leaving me with a confused 2-year-old and a sinking feeling in my chest. The more I watched, the more I noticed. Derek seemed to control every aspect of Rachel's life. I discovered this gradually through small revelations that accumulated like snowflakes building into a drift. Rachel no longer had access to their joint bank accounts. Derek gave her a weekly allowance for groceries and household items. When she wanted to buy something outside those categories, she had to ask his permission. I learned this when Rachel admired a dress in a shop window during one of our rare outings together. "It is beautiful," I said. "You should try it on." Rachel's face fell. "I cannot. Derek handles the finances. He would not approve of you buying a dress." She changed the subject quickly, pointing out a toy store where we could find something for Sophie. But I saw the flash of shame in her eyes before she looked away. Another time I witnessed Derek questioning Rachel about her day in a way that felt more like an interrogation than conversation. "Who did you have lunch with?" he asked, his voice casual, but his eyes sharp. "Just Sarah from the office," Rachel replied. "We went to that new salad place." "Sarah? The one who is always trying to set people up with her single friends." "It is not like that, Derek. We just talked about work." He nodded slowly, but I saw his jaw tighten. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Later, Rachel stopped mentioning Sarah altogether. I asked about her once, and Rachel said they had drifted apart. Different interests. I called my son Marcus one evening, unable to shake my growing concern. "Have you noticed anything different about your sister?" I asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Yeah, Mum. I have been worried too, but every time I try to bring it up, she shuts me down. He told me about his last visit to Sacramento. He had suggested taking Rachel out for dinner, just the two of them, like they used to do when they were younger. Derek had inserted himself into the plan immediately. Family dinner sounds great, Derek had said with that smooth smile of his. Let me make reservations. Throughout the meal, Derek had done most of the talking for Rachel, answering questions directed at her, steering conversations away from topics he did not control. When Marcus tried to speak to his sister privately in the restroom hallway, Derek appeared within moments, claiming he needed to use the facilities himself. She is scared of him, Marcus said quietly. I can see it in her eyes, but she will not admit it. What do we do? I do not know. But we need to watch her. Be there when she is ready to talk. I tried. God knows I tried. I dropped hints that I was available any time she needed me, that nothing she could say would make me love her less, that home would always be a safe place for her. Rachel would nod and smile and change the subject. About a month before the dinner, I made an unannounced visit. I had baked Sophie's favorite chocolate chip cookies and wanted to surprise my granddaughter after preschool. I let myself in with the spare key Rachel had given me years ago. The house was quiet. I could hear Sophie playing in her room upstairs, her little voice narrating some adventure for her stuffed animals. I walked toward the stairs, then heard a sound from the master bedroom. Crying. Muffled but unmistakable. I found Rachel sitting on the edge of the bed, tears streaming down her face. She looked up when I appeared in the doorway, and for a moment raw terror flashed across her features before she composed herself. Mom, I did not hear you come in. Sweetheart, what is wrong? Nothing, just a bad day, work stuff. She wiped her eyes quickly, standing and smoothing her skirt. But as she moved, her sleeve rode up, and I caught sight of something that made my blood run cold. A bruise circling her wrist, dark purple, fading to yellow at the edges. The unmistakable shape of fingers that had gripped too tight. Rachel, your wrist. What happened? She yanked her sleeve down immediately, her face reddening. Oh, that. I bumped into the door. You know how clumsy I am. I had heard that excuse 1,000 times in the emergency room from women with black eyes and broken ribs. I know clumsy. This was not clumsy. I wanted to push harder to demand the truth, but the look on Rachel's face stopped me. She was pleading silently, begging me not to say more. So I swallowed my words and picked up Sophie from her room instead. But that night, lying awake in my empty house, I made a decision. I could not force my daughter to leave her husband, but I could watch, I could wait, and I could be ready when she needed me. I had no idea that moment would come so soon, or in such a devastating way. The invitation came on a Thursday afternoon. My phone rang while I was folding laundry, and Derek's name appeared on the screen. In all the years he had been married to my daughter, I could count on one hand the number of times he had called me directly. Mom, his voice came through warm and pleasant. I am planning a special family dinner this Friday. I want to cook for everyone. Rachel has been missing you. I hesitated, the phone pressed against my ear. Something about the call felt off, though I could not pinpoint exactly what. Derek was never this thoughtful, this considerate. That sounds lovely, I said carefully. What time should I come? 6 o'clock would be perfect. And please do not bring anything. I want to do this myself. After we hung up, I sat for a long moment staring at the phone in my hand. Derek wanted to cook for the family. Derek, who had never shown the slightest interest in hospitality toward me. Derek, who usually found reasons to be absent whenever I visited. I called Rachel. Your husband just invited me to dinner tomorrow, I said without preamble. Rachel's voice was tired but warm. Yes, he mentioned it. He has been in a strange mood lately. Almost nice. That word stuck with me. Almost nice. as if kindness from her own husband was an anomaly worth remarking upon. Despite my reservations, I agreed to go. Refusing would have seemed paranoid, and more importantly, I wanted to see my daughter. I wanted to check on her with my own eyes. Friday arrived grey and cool, the kind of autumn day where the sky seems to press down on the earth. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple navy blouse and black slacks. Before leaving, I grabbed a bottle of wine from my cabinet. Even if Derek had asked me not to bring anything, arriving empty-handed felt rude. The drive to Rachel's house took 20 minutes. The whole way my hands were tight on the steering wheel, my stomach churning with an anxiety I could not explain. I tried to reason with myself. This was just dinner with family. There was nothing to fear. But my body knew something my mind refused to accept. Rachel opened the door when I knocked, and immediately I scanned her face for signs of distress. She looked tired, as she always did lately, but she was smiling. Sophie came running from behind, her arms outstretched. Grammys! Sophie shrieked, launching herself at my legs. I scooped up my granddaughter, burying my nose in her soft hair. She smelled like baby shampoo and innocence, and holding her steadied something inside me. The house was immaculate as always. Fresh flowers on the entry table. Soft music playing from hidden speakers. The dining room table set with their best china. Derek had gone all out. "Mom's so glad you could make it." I turned to see Derek emerging from the kitchen, wearing an apron over his dress shirt, a dish towel slung over his shoulder. He looked relaxed, happy even, and that somehow made me more nervous. "Thank you for inviting me," I said, handing him the wine bottle. "I know you said not to bring anything, but I could not resist." His smile flickered almost imperceptibly. How thoughtful. "We will save this for another time. I have a special bottle I have been wanting to open." Rachel took Sophie upstairs to put her to bed. It was past the little one's bedtime already, and Sophie was yawning despite her excitement at seeing Grammy. That left me alone with Derek in the kitchen. He moved around the space with practiced ease, stirring pots and checking the oven. I watched him trying to see past the performance to the man beneath. "Dinner smells wonderful," I offered. "Beef bourguignon, Rachel's favorite." He said it casually, but something in his tone made me think he did not actually know if it was Rachel's favorite. He had never seemed particularly interested in her preferences before. When Rachel returned, Derek announced that dinner was almost ready. He reached for a wine bottle that was already open on the counter and poured 3 glasses of deep red wine. "This is a special vintage I've been saving," he said, handing me a glass. "Please try it." I accepted the glass with a polite thank you. The wine was a rich burgundy color, swirling slightly as I lifted it. Out of habit, I brought it to my nose first. Years of working around medications and chemicals had made me sensitive to smells. It was automatic. The moment the glass reached my face, I knew something was wrong. The wine smelled off. Beneath the expected notes of oak and fruit, there was something else. Something chemical, acrid wrong. It was faint, nearly masked by the wine's natural bouquet, but it was there. My nurse's training screamed at me to pay attention. I lowered the glass slowly, keeping my expression neutral. Derek was watching me, his eyes fixed on my face with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Delicious," I said, pretending to take a small sip while barely letting the liquid touch my lips. I set the glass down on the table, positioning it away from my place setting. Derek's eyes tracked the movement. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. Frustration. Disappointment. It vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. Dinner was served, and we sat around the beautiful table like a normal family. Derek kept the conversation flowing, asking about my garden, my book club, my plans for the holidays. He was charming, attentive, everything a son-in-law should be. I barely touched my wine, bringing the glass to my lips occasionally, but never actually drinking. Rachel seemed to notice. Mom, you have hardly had any wine. Is it not good I am pacing myself, dear? You know how I get sleepy with too much wine. Rachel laughed. More for me, then. Before I could react, she reached across and picked up my glass. I opened my mouth to stop her, but she had already brought it to her lips, taking a long, deep sip. This is good, she said, setting the glass down. Derek, you have excellent taste. Derek smiled, but his eyes had gone flat. Absolutely, he said quietly. Only the best for family. We finished dinner and I helped clear the plates while Derek loaded the dishwasher. Rachel seemed fine laughing at something Sophie had said earlier, making plans for our next Sunday visit. I started to wonder if I had imagined the strange smell, if my paranoia had gotten the better of me. Then about 45 minutes after she drank the wine, Rachel stood up to fetch dessert. She made it 2 steps before she stumbled, catching herself on the back of a chair. Mom, she said, her voice suddenly thick and slurred. I feel so dizzy. I was at her side in an instant, grabbing her arm. Rachel, what is wrong? Her eyes were unfocused, her pupils dilated, her skin had gone pale and clammy. I do not know. Everything is spinning. Then her knees buckled and she collapsed into my arms. Time seemed to slow as my daughter's weight fell against me. I staggered, barely managing to lower her to the floor without dropping her. Her eyes had rolled back, her body limp and heavy in my arms. Rachel, Rachel, can you hear me? I tapped her cheek, felt for her pulse. It was there but weak and irregular, fluttering beneath my fingers like a trapped bird. Her breathing was shallow, labored. Call 911. I screamed at Derek. Now! He was standing by the kitchen doorway, frozen. His face bore an expression I could not quite read. Not shock, not fear. Something else entirely. Derek, call an ambulance. He blinked, then slowly reached into his pocket for his phone. His movements were unhurried, almost casual, as if I had asked him to order pizza rather than save his wife's life. In that moment, watching him dial with deliberate calm. While my daughter lay unconscious on the floor, I understood. He was not surprised. He had known this was going to happen, because the wine was meant for me. I pushed the thought aside. There would be time for that later. Right now, Rachel needed me. The ambulance arrived in 12 minutes, though it felt like hours. Paramedics flooded through the door, asking rapid-fire questions. What did she eat? What did she drink? Any medications? Any allergies? I told them about the wine. I told them about the smell. There was something in it. I said, my voice shaking. Something that was not supposed to be there. They loaded Rachel onto a stretcher, and I climbed into the ambulance beside her. Derek stayed behind with Sophie, who was mercifully still asleep upstairs, unaware that her mother was being rushed to the hospital. The ride was a blur of sirens and medical terminology. I held Rachel's hand, whispering prayers I had not spoken since my husband's funeral. At the emergency room, they wheeled her away immediately. I was left in a sterile waiting area, clutching a clipboard of forms I could barely see through my tears. A doctor found me an hour later, a young woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Mrs. Williams. I am Dr. Patterson. Your daughter is stable. Thank God. I sagged with relief. What happened to her? Dr. Patterson sat down beside me, her expression grave. We ran a toxicology screen. Your daughter has dangerously high levels of benzodiazepines in her system. It is a powerful sedative. In the dosage she ingested, it could have caused respiratory failure, coma, even death. The room tilted. Benzodiazepines. I knew that drug class well from my nursing days. It was not something that ended up in wine by accident. How did it get in her system, I asked, though I already knew the answer. That is what we need to determine, Mrs. Williams. This level of medication does not occur naturally. Someone put it there. I told her everything. The dinner invitation, the special wine, the smell I had noticed, how I had set the glass down without drinking, and how Rachel had picked it up instead. Dr. Patterson listened without interruption, her face growing more serious with each detail. "We are required to report this to the authorities," she said. "The police will want to talk to you." I nodded. Let them come. I have a lot to tell them. The next few hours were a nightmare of fluorescent lights and endless questions. 2 detectives arrived, a man and a woman, both taking detailed notes as I recounted the evening. They asked me to describe Derek's behavior, his reaction when Rachel collapsed, the way he had watched me with that wine glass. "You believe your son-in-law intended to poison you," the female detective said. It was not a question. "Yes, I believe he put something in that wine specifically for me. My daughter only drank it by accident. Do you have any idea why he would want to harm you?" I shook my head. "I have been trying to figure that out. We have never been close, but I did not think he hated me this much." The detectives exchanged glances. "We will need to search the house and collect evidence. Do you know if there is any wine left from tonight? There should be." The bottle was still mostly full when I left. They made some calls, and within the hour, officers were at Rachel's house collecting the wine bottle, the glasses, and anything else that might be relevant. Derek, I learned later, was taken to the police station for questioning. By morning, the test results confirmed what I already knew. The wine contained a massive dose of crushed benzodiazepine tablets, the same substance found in Rachel's bloodstream. And in Derek's home office, tucked into a locked drawer, police found an empty prescription bottle with someone else's name on it. The arrest happened at dawn. I was sitting by Rachel's hospital bed watching her sleep when Marcus called with the news. Derek was in custody, charged with attempted murder. "Mom," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "They found other things on his computer. He has been planning this for months. What kind of things? Life insurance policies. Derek took out a large policy on Rachel 6 months ago, and he was researching poisons that are hard to detect." My blood ran cold. He was going to kill her. "Yeah, and you were just the first step. They think he plans to make your death look like an accident, then move on to Rachel later. With both of you gone, he would have inherited everything." I looked at my daughter, pale against the hospital pillows, tubes running into her arms. She had married a monster, and none of us had seen it clearly enough to stop him. But she was alive. Against all odds, my daughter was alive, because I had trusted my nose, my instincts, my years of training. And because Rachel had unknowingly drunk the poison meant for me. Sometimes survival comes down to the smallest choices. A glass set aside, a smell that seemed wrong, a mother who could not quite ignore the voice, screaming that something was not right. Derek had planned everything perfectly except for one thing. He had underestimated the woman he had tried to kill. Rachel woke up the next morning groggy and confused but alive. When I told her what had happened, what her husband had done, she stared at me in silence for a long time. Then she started to cry, deep racking sobs that shook her entire body. I held her like I had when she was a little girl, stroking her hair, murmuring that everything would be okay. But even as I said the words, I knew that okay was a long way off. Rachel's entire world had just shattered. The man she loved, the father of her child, had tried to murder her mother and had plans to kill her next. "I should have listened to you," she whispered against my shoulder. "You tried to warn me." "Sweetheart, you could not have known. But I did know. Deep down I knew something was wrong. I was just too scared to admit it." Over the next several days, the truth came pouring out. Rachel told me things she had hidden for years. Secrets she had been too ashamed to share. Derek had been controlling her almost from the beginning. It started small suggestions about what to wear, opinions about her friends. Then it escalated. He took over their finances, giving her an allowance like a child. He monitored her phone, her emails, her every movement. When she tried to push back, he punished her. The bruise on her wrist was not from bumping into a door. Derek had grabbed her during an argument, squeezing until she gasped from the pain. It was not the first time, and she knew it would not be the last. "He told me no one would believe me," Rachel said, her voice hollow. "He said I was too emotional, too irrational. He said if I ever tried to leave, he would take Sophie away. He has connections, important friends. I believed him. Why did you not tell me? Because I was ashamed. Because I thought I could fix it. Because I did not want you to worry." I took her hand, feeling the fragile bones beneath her skin. "Rachel, look at me. None of this was your fault. He is a manipulator. He made you believe his lies. But you are safe now. He cannot hurt you anymore." The investigation revealed just how carefully Derek had constructed his plan. His gambling addiction had caught up with him, leaving him hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to dangerous people. Killing Rachel for her life insurance payout would have solved his financial problems. But first he needed to eliminate me. I was too observant, too suspicious. He could not risk me figuring out the truth before he finished. The police found evidence of his research on my laptop. Searches for sedatives that mimic heart attacks. Questions about how long different drugs take to kill. A document outlining the timeline of his plan, step by meticulous step. He was going to kill me first, then wait a few months before coming for Rachel. Make it look like she died of grief, or an accident, or anything that would not raise suspicion. Sophie would be left without a mother or grandmother, but with a wealthy inheritance that Derek would control completely. When I read those documents, I felt sick. Not just because of what he planned to do, but because of how close he came to succeeding. If I had drunk that wine like a polite guest, I might be dead now. Rachel would have been next, and Sophie would have grown up with a murderer. I threw myself into helping Rachel build a case against Derek. We hired the best attorney we could find, a fierce woman named Patricia who specialized in domestic abuse cases. She listened to Rachel's story without judgment, then laid out a plan of attack. "We are going to nail him," Patricia said, "not just for the poisoning, for everything." Rachel documented years of abuse, writing down every incident she could remember. I dug through financial records, finding evidence of Derek's gambling debts and hidden accounts. Marcus flew in from Seattle, helping us gather character witnesses and coordinate with the prosecutor's office. The trial took 3 months. Derek pleaded not guilty, of course. His lawyer tried to paint him as a loving husband, Rachel as an unstable woman influenced by her overprotective mother. They suggested I had poisoned the wine myself to frame him. But the evidence was overwhelming. The prescription bottle with another person's name purchased on the black market, the searches on his computer, the insurance policies he had taken out in secret, the testimony of other families he had scammed and manipulated over the years, people who came forward once they heard about his arrest. Rachel took the stand on the 7th day. She spoke clearly and steadily about the years of control, the isolation, the fear. She described how Derek had made her feel worthless, crazy, alone. When she talked about the night she drank the poisoned wine, about waking up in the hospital to learn her husband had tried to kill her mother, her voice finally broke. "I loved him," she said. "I trusted him with my life and my child's life, and he was planning to destroy us both." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty of attempted murder, guilty of domestic abuse, guilty of fraud, of forgery, of assault. The judge sentenced Derek to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 12 years. As the bailiffs led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at Rachel one last time. His face was twisted with rage, nothing like the charming man who had swept her off her feet 4 years earlier. Rachel did not flinch. She held my hand, watched him go, and let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for years. "It is over," she said quietly. I squeezed her fingers. "Yes, sweetheart, it is over." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us with questions. Rachel declined to speak, but I stopped at the microphone. The cameras flashed, and I thought about all the women out there who might be watching women trapped in relationships like the one my daughter had escaped. "My name is Emma Williams," I said. "My daughter nearly died because a man she trusted tried to poison her and me. I want every woman watching to know that your instincts matter. If something feels wrong, trust yourself. Do not let politeness or love or fear silence that voice inside you. It might save your life." We walked away from the courthouse together, Rachel and Sophie and Marcus and me. A family battered but not broken, ready to begin again. The months after the trial were difficult in ways I had not anticipated. Derek was in prison, unable to hurt us anymore, but his shadow lingered over everything. Rachel suffered from nightmares, waking up screaming that he was in the house, that he was coming for Sophie. She flinched at loud noises, cried at unexpected moments, struggled to trust anyone outside our immediate family. She sold the house where she had lived with Derek. There were too many bad memories soaked into those walls, she said. With the money, she bought a small apartment closer to me, a fresh start in a neighborhood where no one knew her story. I helped her settle in, painting walls and hanging curtains and arranging furniture until the space felt like home. Sophie adapted quickly, as children often do, excited about her new bedroom, with its view of a park across the street. But I knew Rachel would need more than new surroundings to heal. I found a therapist who specialized in domestic abuse survivors. Dr. Martinez was patient and gentle, never pushing Rachel faster than she was ready to go. Week by week, session by session, I watched my daughter begin to piece herself back together. Rachel also threw herself into her work, but with a new focus. She left the corporate law firm and joined a non-profit that provided legal services to abuse victims. The pay was less, but the purpose was greater. Helping other women escape the situations she had endured gave Rachel a sense of meaning that no salary could match. "She is so brave," I told Marcus one evening when he was visiting. "After everything she went through, she is using it to help others. She learned it from you, Mom. You showed her what strength looks like." I was not sure I agreed, but I appreciated the sentiment. The truth was, we all drew strength from each other. Our family had always been close, but the ordeal with Derek had forged bonds that felt unbreakable. Sophie continued to grow oblivious to most of what had happened. She was too young to understand that her father was in prison, so Rachel told her simply that Daddy had gone away and would not be coming back. Sophie accepted this with the easy resilience of childhood, focusing instead on kindergarten and her collection of stuffed animals and the cookies Grammy always brought when she visited. About a year after the trial, something shifted in Rachel. The shadows under her eyes began to fade. She laughed more easily, moved through the world with less fear. She started going out with friends again, something she had not done in years. One Sunday afternoon, while Sophie napped and we sat on Rachel's balcony, drinking iced tea, she told me about a man she had met. "His name is David," she said, her cheeks flushing slightly. "He is a pediatrician at the hospital where I sometimes work with clients. We have had coffee a few times." I studied her face, looking for the warning signs I had missed with Derek. But all I saw was cautious hope, the tender beginning of something new. "How does he treat you?" "Like an equal. He asks my opinion. Listens when I talk, respects my boundaries. The first time I said no to something, he just nodded and moved on. No guilt, no pressure." "That sounds promising." Rachel smiled. "It is terrifying, Mom. but also wonderful. I forgot what it felt like to be with someone who actually cares about me. I met David a few weeks later. He was nothing like Derek. Where Derek had been polished and performative, David was warm and genuine. He brought coloring books for Sophie instead of expensive gifts for me. He admitted when he did not know something. His eyes crinkled when he laughed, and his laugh was frequent and real. Most importantly, Rachel looked at him without fear. When he touched her hand, she did not flinch. When he spoke, she did not tense. Whatever trauma Derek had inflicted, David seemed to be helping heal it. They took things slow, much slower than Rachel's first courtship. David understood why, and he never pushed. 2 years after they started dating, he proposed with a simple gold ring and a promise to spend his life making her happy. This time, when Rachel brought her fiancé home to meet me, I felt nothing but joy. And when she asked if I saw any red flags, I could honestly say no. He is a good man, I told her. And more importantly, you know who you are now. You would not tolerate anything less. It has been 5 years since that terrible dinner. 5 years since I set down a glass of poisoned wine and unknowingly saved my own life. 5 years since my daughter nearly died because of a man who claimed to love her. I am 63 years old now, and my life is fuller than I ever imagined it could be after losing George. Rachel married David in a small ceremony in my backyard, just family and close friends. Nothing like the elaborate spectacle of her first wedding. Sophie, now 7, served as the flower girl, scattering rose petals with enthusiastic abandon. They gave me a second grandchild last year, a baby boy named George, after the grandfather he will never meet. When I hold him, I think about my late husband, about how much he would have loved to see our daughter find real happiness after so much pain. Marcus got married too, to a wonderful woman he met at a tech conference. They live in Portland now, close enough to visit often, and they are expecting their first child in the spring. My family is growing thriving, building lives that Derek's darkness could never have imagined. Sophie calls David Dad now. She knows Derek exists, knows he is in prison, but she has no real memories of him. That is probably for the best. Her childhood is filled with birthday parties and school plays, and weekends at Grammy's house, not shadows of violence and fear. Derek will be eligible for parole consideration in 7 more years. The thought used to terrify me. Now it just makes me sad. Sad for the man he could have been, the life he threw away for greed and cruelty. When that day comes, we will be ready. Restraining orders are in place. Rachel has moved twice since the trial, and her address is carefully protected. Whatever Derek does when he gets out, he will not find us unprepared. But I try not to think about him too much. The therapist I started seeing after the trial taught me that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Ironic given what happened with the actual poison, but true nonetheless. I have learned to let go. Not to forgive Derek, because some things cannot be forgiven, but to release him from the space he occupied in my mind. He does not deserve any more of my thoughts, my energy, my fear. He took enough from our family. He will not take our peace. These days I spend my time on things that matter. I volunteer at a domestic violence shelter, sharing my story with women who need to hear that escape is possible. I babysit my grandchildren, building the kind of memories that will sustain them through whatever challenges life brings. I tend my garden, read my books, meet my friends for lunch on Wednesdays. It is a quiet life, but it is mine, and I am grateful for every ordinary moment of it. Sometimes Rachel asks me about that night, how I knew something was wrong with the wine, why I trusted my instincts when it would have been so easy to ignore them. I tell her the truth. 30 years of nursing taught me to pay attention when something feels off. The human body knows things the mind cannot articulate. That strange smell, that feeling in my gut, It was my subconscious recognizing danger before my conscious mind caught up. But I also tell her this. Being a mother means always watching, always worrying, always ready to protect your children, even when they are grown. I noticed Derek's coldness because I was looking. I questioned his behavior because I loved Rachel too much to let anything slide. That vigilance saved both our lives. To anyone watching this story, anyone who feels that familiar twist of unease around someone they love, I want you to know that your instincts matter. You are not being paranoid. You are not overreacting. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Do not drink the wine just to be polite. Do not ignore the warning signs because you do not want to cause trouble. Your life, your safety, your peace of mind, these are worth more than any social nicety. Trust yourself. It might be the most important thing you ever do. I think about that evening often, the one that changed everything. The beautiful table setting, the charming husband, the glass of wine that smelled just slightly wrong. In another version of that night, I drink the wine like a good guest. In another version, I am dead, and Rachel follows shortly after, and Sophie grows up with a murderer for a father. But that is not what happened. Instead, I listened to the voice that said something was wrong. I set the glass down. And my daughter, my beautiful, brave daughter, survived to build a life better than anything Derek could have destroyed. That is the ending I choose to focus on. Not the darkness we escaped, but the light we found on the other side. Now, I have a question for you. Have you ever had a moment when your instincts told you something was wrong, and you had to decide whether to listen? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. Your experiences might help someone else trust their own inner voice. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about Resilience Family and the strength we find in our darkest moments. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you for listening to my family's story, for caring about what happened to us, for being part of this community. I wish you safety. I wish you courage. And I wish you the wisdom to trust yourself when it matters most. Take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time.